In the Hartwell family, everyone understood the unspoken hierarchy, and everyone understood that I, Celeste Hartwell Cross, sat at the top of it. Not because I was the eldest, though I was. Not because I'd been given more. If anything, I'd built everything myself. Or at least that's how I told the story. I had Julian, a CFO with a corner office and a company card that didn't ask questions. I had the dinners, the retreats, the ring that caught light from 3 rooms away. I had an Instagram feed that made women I'd never met feel inadequate before their morning coffee. I called myself a lifestyle strategist, a luxury wellness consultant. I knew how to position a room, curate an experience, make people feel the gravitational pull of someone who had figured it out. That was the phrase I used in every bio, every pitch, every intro at a networking dinner, figured it out, as if success were a puzzle, and I alone had solved it. Elias had not figured it out. That much I was certain of. My little brother was 33, 3 years younger, and working as a school librarian in a low-income district across town. He mentored students in creative writing on his lunch breaks. He organized book drives. He helped teenagers write college essays for free. He drove a car that needed a new transmission and wore the same 3 sweaters in rotation. I didn't hate him for it. I want to be clear about that. Elias was kind, genuinely kind in a way that made people soften around him. He listened when others spoke. He remembered things. He was the kind of person who brought soup when you were sick without being asked and didn't mention it afterward. But kindness without platform is invisible. And in the Hartwell family, invisible meant irrelevant. I'd watched Elias disappear into the background of every family gathering since we were teenagers. He sat near the edges. He spoke when spoken to. He never made an entrance because he didn't understand that entrances were a form of currency. I told myself I felt sorry for him, that beneath the pity was a kind of love. But if I'm honest, and I'm only honest now because I have to be, what I really felt was relief. Elias being small made the room bigger for me. His quiet made my noise sound more impressive. His ordinary life made my manufactured one look extraordinary by comparison. I needed him to stay where he was so I could stay where I was. That was the arrangement, and for 33 years, it held. Part 2. The private dining room at Hargrove & Sons was understated in the way expensive things pretend to be. Cream linen, low amber light, a menu printed on cardstock. My father had spent 38 years as a regional operations director for a major hospital system, the kind of man who arrived early, stayed late, and never once asked to be noticed. The dinner was his, a small celebration, a handful of his closest colleagues, his old team, his family. I arrived 12 minutes late in the ivory column dress I'd bought in Milan. Julian followed 3 steps behind me in the way men do when they've learned not to argue about timelines. Traffic, I said to no one in particular, letting my coat fall into Julian's hands as I swept the room with a smile. I air-kissed my mother, squeezed my father's arm. "You look wonderful, Daddy. Retirement suits you." He laughed the soft, embarrassed laugh of a man who didn't know what to do with compliments. I found my seat and within 10 minutes had redirected the conversation toward Julian's boutique hotel expansion, my upcoming wellness retreat concept, a contact I'd made at a luxury summit in Scottsdale. The table was listening. That's all I ever wanted, the table listening. The attention settling on me like heat from a lamp. Elias sat 3 chairs down, quiet as wallpaper. I'd looked at him once when we arrived, given him the small sisterly nod that communicated, "I see you. You're here. You're fine." Then I'd moved on. That was our rhythm. Halfway through the entree, I felt generous. That happens sometimes. After a second glass of wine and a successful room read, I gestured toward Elias with my fork. "The library must be peaceful," I said, with the light warmth of someone complimenting a garden. "You've always been good at quiet things." He glanced up, said nothing. "Not everyone needs to be loud," I continued, smiling around the table. "There's real value in, I don't know, holding the space for others. Curation." I touched my collarbone. Honestly, I respect it. That was supposed to land as a compliment. It didn't land that way. Before Elias could respond, the woman across from us, Maribel Chen, one of my father's former program directors, set down her fork. "I actually read your manuscript last month," she said to Elias, matter-of-factly. "The way you mention something everyone should already know. The excerpt your agent shared through the network. It's very strong work." She smiled at him, then turned to the table. "And I heard the deal came through. Congratulations." The room shifted. I looked at Elias. He looked at Maribel. Then his eyes moved briefly to mine, just long enough for me to read something careful in them. Not pride, not nervousness, something more like bracing. "What deal?" I asked. "Publishing contract," Maribel said simply. "A real one, from what I understand." I laughed the quick, instinctive kind that comes before your brain catches up to your mouth. "Elias has a book deal." "He does," she said. "Since when are you writing a novel?" I asked. I aimed for teasing. It came out flatter than I intended. "A few years," he said, quietly. The way he always said everything. I wanted proof. That's the word I would use later to justify it, proof. I picked up his phone from the table where it sat unlocked. The way we'd always shared devices in our family. The easy assumption of access. I said I just wanted to see. I said I was proud of him. I opened the email from his literary agent. I read the contract summary. I found the advance figure, 6 figures. The number sat behind my eyes for a long moment, a clear, definitive 6-figure advance. For Elias, for the library, for the quiet man in the rotation sweaters. I put the phone down carefully. I picked up my wine glass. I smiled at the table. "Well," I said, "I guess even librarians get lucky sometimes." The words came out perfectly light, but something inside me had already cracked. I wasn't jealous. I was thinking strategically. I called my mother from the car on the way home. "The advance is pre-tax," I said. "Publishing contracts aren't paid all at once. There are royalty structures and marketing offsets and production costs. It's not like he's suddenly wealthy." "Of course," my mother said. "And a first book is a first book. It doesn't mean anything yet. It could sit on shelves. It could get 2 reviews and disappear." "You're right. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm being realistic. That's different." Julian said nothing from the driver's seat. He had a specific kind of silence, the kind that listened. But lying in bed that night, I kept returning to the email. The structure of it. The clean, professional language. The agent's signature. The publisher's letterhead. I'd memorized the figure without meaning to. It lived in my head with an unreasonable amount of clarity. The problem, I told myself, wasn't that Elias had a deal. The problem was that no one had thought about what it meant. He was 33 working at a school, with no platform, no brand, no public identity. If this book was going to reach people, if it was going to actually do something, someone needed to think about the architecture around it. Someone with experience in visibility, in personal branding, in how the market reads a story. I was that someone. If Elias is going to step into a public role, I thought, lying in the dark, someone in this family needs to manage the narrative. That's what I told myself. That was the frame I used. Not jealousy strategy, not fear vision. I believed it completely. That might be the most damning thing I can say. Part 4. The post took me 45 minutes to write. I chose the photo carefully, the two of us, at Christmas 3 years ago, when he looked warm and I looked radiant. I wrote something genuine sounding. Proud sister energy, the kind of post that performs sincerity through its length. I talked about how our family always believed in him, how some gifts take longer to be seen, how the world was about to discover what I'd always known. I included the screenshot of the contract summary. I told myself I cropped it carefully. I hadn't. You could read the payment structure if you looked. You could see the number if you knew what to look for. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the engagement. I was thinking about who would see my name next to his, within the hour. I had comments from women I'd wanted to impress for years. Celeste, how beautiful. You must be so proud. What a family. The warmth of it was real. It felt like vindication, like being included in the success by proximity, which is its own kind of success. Then Elias commented, "This wasn't yours to share. Take it down." 30 likes in 4 minutes. People asking if I'd gotten permission. Someone writing, "Yikes," another saying, "Contract details are private." I deleted the post. My hands were steady, but my face was hot. He called me. I answered before I was ready. "You embarrassed me," I said, "because offense is the fastest defense." "You posted my contract," he said. "I was celebrating you. Do you know how many people saw that? Do you know what kind of platform reach? It wasn't yours to post. Celeste, I'm your sister. That's not a permission slip." He hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, replaying the call. I wasn't angry about being wrong. I hadn't decided yet whether I was wrong. I was angry because he'd corrected me in public, in front of my network, in front of the people whose opinions I'd spent years carefully curating. Elias didn't understand platforms. He didn't understand that attention was a resource you had to manage, shape, direct before someone else shaped it for you. He was going to flounder in this industry without someone who knew how it worked. I was that someone. I'd been that someone for years. He just couldn't see it yet. Part 5. My parents hosted a reconciliation dinner. Low key, they said. Just family. Come on, let's reset. I came with a folder. Not a physical folder, I wasn't that obvious. But I had prepared. I had thought it through. I'd spent 6 days building out the concept. And in my mind, it was elegant, clean, obvious. Once you saw it, midway through the salmon. I put it on the table. "I've been thinking about Elias's platform," I said, with the measured confidence I used in client pitches. "There's a real opportunity here to build something. A podcast about creativity and education, an online writing course for aspiring authors, workshop retreats for young writers. The personal brand around it, the through line, is obvious. The teacher who became the author, that's a story people buy into." My father nodded slowly. My mother looked between us. "I've already reserved the domain," I continued, theeliaseffect.com. Strong, memorable, searchable. I've mocked up 3 logo options and drafted a launch timeline. Elias set his fork down. "Did you ask me?" he said. The question was simple. The way he asked it was not. He asked it the way a lawyer asks something already knowing the answer. "I'm asking you now," I said. "That's why I'm here. You bought a domain with my name on it, without asking. Because I knew you'd overthink it. I knew you'd hesitate and the moment would pass and—" "You've lived in my life like it belongs to you," he said. His voice was flat. "My contract, my work, my name." The table went very still. "You've lived small your whole life," I said. The words came out before I'd approved them. "You don't know what success is supposed to look like." I don't know why I said it. That's a lie, I know exactly why. Because I was scared. Because the 6-figure advance and the domain I'd built in his name and the post I'd deleted were all evidence of something I wasn't ready to name. And when I'm scared, I attack? Elias pushed his chair back. He stood. "You'll be hearing from my attorney." I laughed. A real one, bright and dismissive. He wasn't joking. I just didn't know that yet. Part 6. I launched the site anyway. Theeliaseffect.com went live on a Tuesday. I uploaded a stock photo of a library. I wrote a bio that called me the creative director of a sibling-led platform for writers and educators. I emailed bloggers, a few small podcast hosts, a couple of school librarians. I told them I was managing Elias's brand and would love to set up a feature. 3 days later, the cease and desist arrived. Prioner, attorney, representing Elias Hartwell. The letter was precise in the way expensive legal work is precise. It demanded I take down the site, cease using his name in any professional context, stop contacting his professional network under any guise of representation, and halt all use of his image, likeness, and intellectual property. I read it 3 times. Then I texted Elias. Seriously, over a website, you're acting like I stole your identity. I was trying to help you. He didn't respond. The silence was somehow worse than a reply. If he'd responded with anger, I could have worked with anger. Anger had texture, points of entry, places to push back. His silence had none of that. It was a wall with no doors. I took the site down. I posted an Instagram story. Some people can't accept help. Then families should elevate each other. Then success changes quiet people. The engagement was thin. A few old friends liked it. Someone from my networking circle wrote, "Chin up, queen." But most people scrolled past. I could feel it, the faint, specific sensation of an audience losing interest. I refreshed the page more often than I should have. Part 7. His website went live the same week his book launched. eliashartwell.com. Simple. Clean. His full name at the top. Nothing else. Below it, book release date. Press materials. A blog with 3 entries about the writing process. Free resources for student writers. A contact form for school workshops. At the bottom, in clean serif type built in a library, not a showroom. I read that line and understood immediately. He hadn't needed to tag me. He hadn't needed to name me. He'd just built the opposite of everything I'd tried to build in his name. And the contrast said everything. The interviews started. A regional NPR affiliate. A podcast for educators. A feature in a literary journal. Elias talked about his students, the ones who came to the library at lunch because they didn't have anywhere else to go. He talked about books as places to live when your real life felt unlivable. He talked about how nobody got to write someone else's story for them. Ikem. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. The comments gathered under every piece. He seemed so genuine. This is what real influence looks like. I love that he still works with students. Quiet people always surprise you. I kept scrolling. I kept reading. I couldn't stop. What undid me wasn't the praise. It was what they praised. They loved his gentleness, his commitment to the school, his years of anonymity. They loved the exact qualities I had spent years seeing as evidence of his smallness, his patience, his ordinariness, his willingness to stay. He hadn't been invisible. He'd been building, and I'd been standing in the middle of his foundation calling it a dead end. Part 8. He'd stopped appearing in my stories weeks before he said anything. I noticed in the way you notice a noise has stopped, the absence was louder than the thing itself. No more photos of our dinners. No more approval when I pitched the retreat concept. He'd grown quiet in the Julian way, which was different from the Elias way. Elias's silence was patient. Julian's was tired. One evening, I was telling him about a podcast that had declined to interview me in favor of Elias, and I may have said some things about the unfairness of it, the algorithm, the way authenticity had become its own performance. He set his glass down. "You don't support people, Celeste," he said. "You attach yourself to them." I opened my mouth. He kept going. He listed them without raising his voice. The charity gala his team had organized where I'd accepted the compliments. The community campaign where I'd told people I was the communications lead when I'd shown up for the photo. The studio deposit I'd put on his card for a brand shoot for a business that had never had a paying client. "Every time," he said, "you stood next to someone else's work and called it vision." "That's not. I thought I married someone ambitious," he said. He wasn't angry. That was the worst part. He was just tired of being surprised. "I didn't realize you were just loud around other people's work." He stayed at a hotel that night. Then longer. Then the separation papers came. Julian leaving wasn't just losing a marriage. Julian leaving was losing the architecture, the CFO title in my bio, the boutique hotel connections, the reason any of it looked the way it looked, without him. The life I'd built felt like a set someone had started to dismantle. The lights still worked, but you could see the rigging. Part 9. After the podcast episode, Elias recorded 2 parts, understated, Devastatingly specific about the experience of having someone try to own your story, people started to look closer at mine. It didn't happen as an avalanche. It happened the way erosion happens. One person who'd worked the gala posted a long thread. A parent from a school event tagged a journalist. An ex-colleague of mine shared a story without naming names. But the names weren't hard to find. A local gossip page made a video. 12 minutes. Screenshots of the deleted post. A screenshot of the website before I took it down. Commentary that was accurate in the way only documentary-style snark can be. I prepared a response. I drafted something careful. I was a sister who'd overstepped out of love, who'd been misunderstood in a complicated family dynamic. I filmed 3 versions of myself explaining it. The comments on each attempt were worse than the last. Isn't she the one who tried to brand her brother? She didn't want a family. She wanted content. Imagine being jealous of a school librarian helping kids. I made a secondary account to defend myself. Someone identified it within 48 hours because I type the way I type, and that doesn't change with a new username. An influencer page made a list. People who tried to monetize their siblings' success. I was the 3rd entry. I wasn't canceled in a single night. It was slower and more thorough than that. 1 unfollow, 1 declined collaboration, 1 unreturned email. The accumulation of small withdrawals from an account that had always run on other people's deposits. I kept searching my name every night. I told myself I was monitoring the situation, but really, I just needed to confirm I still existed in the conversation, even a bad version of it. Being discussed felt safer than the alternative. Part 10. I relocated in January. I called it a reset, a conscious uncoupling from a city that had calcified around a version of me I was outgrowing. The new apartment was smaller. The new Instagram was cleaner. The new bio read, healing, reinvention, feminine clarity, personal storytelling. I posted photos of coffee cups, afternoon light through linen curtains, books I arranged more carefully than I read them. The posts got 12 likes, 11, 8. I tried a live stream. 3 people watched. One of them asked, "Wait, are you Elias Hartwell's sister?" I ended the stream. On a Thursday afternoon, I walked into a bookstore I hadn't been to before. New neighborhood, new routines I was trying. The smell of it hit me first. That particular paperback warmth. And for a moment, I felt something soft. Then I saw the display. A full table near the front. His book in 3 stacks, spines facing out. A poster with his photograph, the one where he looked exactly like himself. Unhurried, a little tired, wearing the expression of someone who had earned being exactly where he was. Below the photo, Elias Hartwell, teacher, author, advocate for young voices. I stood there for a long time. I'm not sure how long. Long enough that a clerk looked over and then looked away. I used to think visibility was something you seized. You positioned yourself for it. You dressed for it. Networked for it. Married for it. I'd spent 15 years arranging the evidence of a life into something legible to strangers. Elias had done none of that. He'd just written, and taught, and waited, and done the work so quietly that when the world finally looked, there was no artifice to see through, just the thing itself, behind me. 2 women were browsing. One said, "I love Elias Hartwell. He seems so genuine." The other said, "Didn't he have some crazy sister or something?" I went perfectly still. "I don't know," the first one said, picking up a copy of the book. "Nobody remembers her name." She said it without cruelty, without interest, just fact. The way you'd say the weather has changed or this used to be a different restaurant. No heat in it at all. I found the bathroom at the back of the store. I stood in front of the mirror under fluorescent light and looked at myself without any of the usual equipment. No ring, no Julian 1 room over, no carefully positioned lamp, no pending notification confirming that someone, somewhere, was looking. Just my face, my own face. a face I had been performing for so long I wasn't sure I knew its resting expression. And for the first time, the question arrived clearly. Who was I? Before anyone was watching, I didn't have an answer. That was the part that stayed with me. That evening, I sat in my smaller apartment and my phone lit up with a notification. Your recent post reached 3 accounts. The television was on. A streaming trailer played warm tones, a school hallway, the sound of a library, a young boy running his finger along a row of spines. The narrator said from the novel by Elias Hartwell, coming this fall to streaming in 6 languages. I turned it off. The room was quiet. The specific kind of quiet that isn't waiting for anything. Not a pause before an entrance. Not the held breath before a room turns to look. Just air. And a lamp. And the particular silence of a life that had run out of audience. I sat in it for a long time. I've always been afraid of silence. I filled it with Julian's credit card and Instagram captions and family dinners I redirected toward myself. I filled it with Elias, his contract, his name, his story, because my own had run dry and I hadn't noticed until someone else's started flowing. But there, in that apartment, something I can only describe as clarity arrived. Not peace, not redemption, just clarity. The cold, unsexy, unglamorous understanding of who I had been and what it had cost. I had not loved Elias. I had used him as a mirror. When the mirror showed something I didn't expect, I tried to break it. He hadn't broken. I opened my phone. I went to his website. I read the blog post he'd written about starting the book, the early drafts, the lunch breaks at the school library, the years of rejection, the one student who'd asked him if the story was true, and he'd said, most of it. I read it twice. Then I closed the app, put the phone face down on the table, and sat with the silence. It didn't get comfortable. I don't think it was supposed to, but it was mine. And for the first time in longer than I could honestly remember, nothing in the room was performing.